You've probably heard the letters ESG thrown around a lot lately. And, it's way more than just another piece of corporate jargon. It's actually a movement that's reshaping the very DNA of business. In this explainer, we're going to decode what environmental, social, and government standards really mean, and more importantly, how they're creating a whole new rulebook for the corporate world. So let's dive in. This quote from the Davos Manifesto really gets right to the heart of the matter. For decades, the dominant idea was pretty simple. A company exists to make money for its shareholders, period. But this statement, it flips that whole idea on its head. It argues for a much, much bigger purpose, moving away from just focusing on profit to a more complete view of what a company's responsibilities are. Now, this shift in purpose isn't happening in a vacuum. It's actually sparking a huge debate about what a business is even for. And that brings us right to the central conflict that's really powering this whole ESG movement. It's a clash between two totally different ways of thinking.
So, on one side, you have the classic model, shareholder primacy. It's super straightforward. The main goal is to make as much profit as possible for the people who own the company. End of story. But now there's this other idea that's really gaining momentum, stakeholder capitalism. And this view, which is being pushed by big groups like the Business Roundtable, says, hold on a minute. A company has a duty to everyone involved, its employees, its customers, its suppliers, and even the community it operates in.
And believe me, this isn't just some academic debate. The COVID-19 pandemic really acted as a massive catalyst here. It suddenly made all these social and environmental issues impossible to ignore. It forced boards and major investors to ask some really tough questions about what their companies truly stood for, making this whole conversation incredibly urgent. Okay, so we get the why behind this big shift. But what are we actually talking about when we say ESG? Let's go ahead and break down the acronym, piece by piece. First up, we've got E for environmental. This is all about a company's impact on the natural world. It's asking the big questions. How big is your carbon footprint? How do you manage your waste and pollution? And are you prepared for the risks that come with climate change? It's basically a report card on how well you're taking care of the planet. Then there's S for social. This one is all about people. It looks at how a company treats its own employees, the working conditions in its supply chains, how committed it is to diversity, and how it interacts with its customers and the wider community. It's really the human side of the business. And finally, we have G for governance. The best way to think about this is like the company's internal rulebook. It's the structure that holds everything together. We're talking about things like who's on the board? Is executive pay fair? Are there strong checks and balances to prevent things like bribery and corruption? It's the framework that makes sure the company is run properly and ethically. So what does this look like in the real world? Well, for E, it could mean a company setting a target to get to net zero emissions. For S, it might be guaranteeing safe and ethical practices for workers all the way down its supply chain. And for G, it could be making sure the board has a diverse mix of people with different backgrounds and experiences. These are the kinds of concrete actions that make ESG more than just letters. Now, it's really easy to look at E, S, and G and think they're three equal parts of a whole. But what we found is that one of them plays a much bigger, more powerful role than the others. Let's dig into that. And here it is, the key idea. Governance isn't just another pillar. It's the engine that makes the whole thing go. Because think about it, without strong governance, without the right people on the board making the right decisions and holding everyone accountable, well, all those promises about helping the planet and society can just end up being nice words on a website. And you can see exactly how this engine works right here. It's this chain of influence that starts with big investors. They adopt these things called stewardship codes, which now almost always include ESG duties. Then they use their power to pressure corporate boards. And it's the board, the very core of G, that has to create the ESG strategy and make sure the company actually follows through. And just so we're clear, this is not a niche trend. An incredible 84% of these stewardship codes around the world now mention ESG. That is a huge number. It shows a massive, coordinated push from the world's biggest investors, all demanding that corporate governance takes these issues seriously. It's a quiet revolution driven by capital. But this whole shift isn't just happening because investors are demanding it. Now, governments and regulators are stepping in, and they're starting to turn these informal expectations into hard official roles. This timeline really shows you how fast things are moving, especially in Europe. What started out in 2014 as a simple directive about reporting has just exploded into this huge regulatory framework. You've got the Sustainable Finance Action Plan, the Disclosure Regulation, and now this EU taxonomy, which is basically a dictionary for what counts as a green activity. They're building a complete mandatory rulebook for this stuff. But as with any massive, rapid change, it's not all sunshine and roses. Is this new system working perfectly? Not even close. There are some pretty significant growing pains we need to talk about. One of the biggest problems right now is a total lack of consistency. There are all these different agencies that give companies ESG ratings, but they're all playing by different rules. They measure different things, they use different math, and they decide different factors are more important. The result? Total confusion. A company can be an ESG superstar according to one rating and a total failure according to another. And all of that confusion and inconsistency creates the perfect environment for something called greenwashing. When the data is all over the place, it's pretty easy for a company to talk a big game about how green and sustainable they are without actually doing the hard work to back it up. It's basically the art of looking green without the hassle of, actually being green. And that's not the only problem. A lot of the data companies report isn't even audited. The rules are getting so complicated that it's hard to apply them consistently. We don't have enough good data yet, so a lot of this is based on what we hope will happen, not what the numbers say. It's a messy, complicated transition, for sure. So that leaves us with the big question, right? Is this whole ESG movement a cathedral in the making? A huge, ambitious, long-term project that, despite all the mess and challenges right now, is slowly but surely building a better, more sustainable economy? Or is it all just talk? Is it at risk of becoming a bunch of empty buzzwords and slick marketing? The foundation is being laid, but only time will tell if you're building a lasting monument or just the ruin of good intentions.